Happy to be here in Salzburg today in the context of CIVIS Days. We'll start, just handle all this. So these are the instructions again. I hope you have enough time to connect on EduRoam or the Wi-Fi and to connect with the Menti. So first, let's tell you a little bit who we are, so you know where we're coming from when we speak about BIPs. I have a panel. A first part of the panel is going to be about how CIVIS organizes BIPs, and the second part is a great survey that will tell us about the feedback of our how the community sees it. So we have here today Alexandru Cartis, who's the head of education unit based at the University of Bucharest. Lars Banzhaf, who is the head of mobility based at the University of Tübingen. Leonie Röthler, who is, I would like to take the chance to introduce the new concept of the citizen. Leonie is a true citizen. She's a student here at PLUS, who is holding tomorrow the final presentation of her second bachelor and was kind enough to still come and spend some time with us today. But she has been a student ambassador. She's participated in at least 2 BIPs and is involved in student-led projects. So thank you so much for being with us today. And also, of course, from the University of Bucharest, Michela is, sorry, Michela, I like to pronounce your last name, is a great addition to our session because she will be sharing with us the results of some surveys on BIPs in the context of CIVIS. So thank you for being here and accepting to join us last minute. First of all, I'd like to know who is in the room so we can actually adjust the presentation to your needs. We have presented this in the context of EAIE, the International Higher Education Conference last week. And of course, most people there were not citizens, like maybe many of you are. And we want to know exactly what you need to know about BIPs. And as you see in the screen, we love dots. So they're in our logo and they're everywhere. Okay, so we see that 70%, 65% staff, 40% academics, different needs, but still a lot of interest on BIPs. I'm going to go to the next slide so we can get started. Would like to know who is here a member of CIVIS and who is coming from elsewhere and see how we can help you through the CIVIS experience. Okay, bunch of citizens, but welcome to the guests from other alliances or other universities and other institutions. Thank you for coming and joining us. Would like to know where you're coming from today, because this is such a melting pot, an intercultural alliance, and it's great to also see the needs in different geographical places. This one is trickier, so you have to point and click. Okay, Europe is winning, which makes sense. Hoping some of our African universities are also here. I'll give you 2 seconds to complete. It's also very helpful for us to know where you're coming from. Okay. So the question here is, what is a BIP? You have 4 options. Is it cars, beep, beep, beep? Is it a format of Erasmus plus mobility? Is it the roadrunner trying to get the coyote? Or you have no idea? The coyote is his idea. Okay, you know what BIPs are, so I'll move on. So what we're going to do in this presentation is talk about BIPs in 2 different ways. First of all, we'll give you a context of what they mean for CIVIS, because they are only a part of how we see educational offer in our alliance. And we'll talk about, in terms of mobility and in terms of education, what BIPs mean. Then we're going to go a little bit further and talk about the evolution of how we have gone from organizing 7 BIPs in the beginning to almost 50 to 55 every year. what happened in between and how we're thinking about these things. And at the end, we'll give you a step-by-step on how we make this work, what our process is in CIVIS, and we'll end up with a survey sort of evaluating those efforts. So I am very happy to give the floor to Alex, and who will start explaining BIPs in the context of CIVIS. Let's get from here. Oh, you want to take the mic? You have to turn it on.
Thank you very much, Maria Isabel, and hello again to everyone, and also hello to the newcomers to the session. So the idea is that in CIVIS, BIPs were from the very beginning the new approach for us to continue the philosophy on which we started to build the educational offer, in which BIPs are part of a larger framework. And you have seen, some of you which were on the European degree session earlier, some of you, those of you already saw also the CIVIS educational framework in one of the presentations before, in which you saw that the philosophy is to build based on small-scale learning activities and have this approach towards the larger ones, the degrees, and of course the European degree. And this is where the BIPs fit in, because we took advantage of the new framework of the Erasmus Plus program and said, well, that's the perfect place to fit those small learning activities in which we can explore both virtual learning and on-site learning activities for students in a short mobility format. And we will talk more about how we thought about this when we will talk about also the development across the past years. But the idea is that we are using BIPs in this building up process, so to build up new learning experiences for our students, to test the project, the cooperations between the academics and how they're working together on innovative approaches and topics and in innovative ways of teaching, but also to develop new experiences, larger ones, such as micro-credentials, micro-programs, well, and degrees of all levels, also keeping together the other small-scale learning initiatives like the MOOCs, the courses, the webinars, and so on. So this is just to put them in the educational context of the Alliance, but we will speak more a little bit later about, well, the logic behind it and the details of how this educational development was actually considered.
Thank you, Alex. And perhaps, Lars, you can say a word about the role that BIPs play in mobility, but also looking at all these other possibilities that we have in CIVIS.
Yeah, good morning also from my side. Thank you, Maria Isabel. Looking back to the last 2 years into CIVIS, one could have got the impression a little bit that it's all about BIPs and CIVIS, because it played a very central role indeed. But of course, it is not only about BIPs when we look into CIVIS. We all know about what the expectations from the European Commission is about when it comes to mobility internally in the European alliances. So there's a big expectations that up to 50% of students somehow profit from the alliance. 50% of mobility is, of course, something that is very far in the moment. But when we look back, what our goals and objectives have been after establishing CIVIS during the first 3 years, for the second phase of the CIVIS Alliance, or this project time, for these following 4 years, we have formulated the objectives to more or less double mobilities within the CIVIS Alliance. What does it mean, and how are the BIPs related to that? Apart from BIPs, of course, the standard semester exchange still plays a big and decisive role when it comes to mobility. So at the end of the CIVIS 1 phase, we have reached an umbrella agreement, and looking into details, what opportunities are in there. I never counted really the spots that are available there, but we have approximately 8,000 semester places between CIVIS universities. So of course we are not exchanging that many students, and it will probably not happen because our budgets are of course not endless. But the BIPs here play really a second important role, and it's a second pillar in terms, besides the semester exchange, to open up such short-term opportunities for students. Also beginning of 2022, when the BIPs were still very new to the Erasmus program, CIVIS formulated a first strategy for BIPs and planned to go, I say sometimes all in, because of the experiences CIVIS had with short-term summer programs and virtual components. So sometimes it was just, you know, bringing things together or adopt it to the new format. So that's why the idea was that each CIVIS member, at that time I think it was 9 universities, agreed that each university would apply for 10 BIPs, having then 90 BIPs per year, and attracting about 20 students, which is a decisive number then in terms of quantity of mobilities. So those almost 2,000 students in mobility. So that's the background for the BIP strategy back in the beginning of 2022. But of course, we are still far from doubling figures and looking at mobility. So looking at the other opportunities that are also showed on the slide, we currently prepare quite a few opportunities for degree programs, joint degree programs. But as we all know, that takes some time to get started. So we do not expect really students in programs earlier than 2026, really. So these numbers or the fruits of such initiatives and programs will hopefully come later, after and beyond 26. But what is a very important thing for us, because we also have no secret treasure box and can finance real mobilities as we would like to do. Virtual mobility will play a very important role during the second phase of those 4 years project time, because here is really much potential in raising the numbers. So after having this big focus on BIPs and standard semester exchange and preparing degree programs, we now have opened that call with virtual mobility options and very much hope for new programs to come and opportunities for that kind of mobility so far for the moment.
Thank you, Lars. So one thing is what we see as a context, right? The BIPs as part of the building blocks for creating bigger educational, long-term educational offer. And the other is the strategy, how strategic they are for mobility. But then there's the experience. Students go, they experience a course abroad, they meet people from other places, and this also is part of the context of their educational journey. So what I would ask Leonie is to tell us how do you see, you participated in 2 BIPs, how do you see the BIPs play a part of your larger educational career and what you have done in the university? What role did the BIPs play for you?
Hello also from my side, and thank you for having me here. In my personal life and also my professional life, I'm very internationally oriented, I would say. And the BIPs really help in being globalized, being international, being intercultural, getting to know other people, networking. And I feel like it's not only important for me being internationally oriented, but also for everyone. We live in a globalized world, and BIPs just help you in getting a little feeling of internationality, getting to know how other people study, how different universities work, meeting other professors from different countries, because we all are a little different in our cultures and our learning abilities and teaching, especially for you also, and most of you attending our stuff, as we heard. So, and for me personally, the BIPs are very important for enhancing all the globalness we have here. And I think that's also a very big part for all of us, because we all are here. So, yeah.
What made you decide to participate? I mean, you're internationally inclined. How did you hear about them in the first place?
So the very first contact I had with CIVIS was through the international office on Instagram. So the marketing was very good here at Salzburg, I would say. And I wanted to participate because I had an exchange semester in South Korea and wanted to do more because I really enjoyed it very much, and didn't want to do a second exchange semester because I wanted to finish my bachelor at some point, which I'm doing tomorrow. So Yeah, and the BIP is a very good opportunity to just have this 1 week, and it's a very big offer. We heard there's a lot more BIPs coming, and I already looked at some more. So the possibilities and the offers are very broad, and I think there's something for everyone.
Thank you, Leonie. I think you have just made music to my communication unit ears with the promotion being good. Thank you, Salzburg, for the work you're doing there. But also you bring a point that is interesting and that is part of the questions that we'll be asking later, is how do we make this mobility more inclusive to more people and not only have students like you? We're very happy that you have been able to participate in different BIPs and that you can even go further. How do we get more students that not normally go abroad to participate as well? So let's move on to our next slide. BIPs are not what they are from one day to the next in the context of CIVIS. It has been a growing and an adventure with growing pains. And of course, we have a lot of questions still on how we continue to grow in this direction. So what I propose is that we go about it in steps, and we have this image of how they have been evolving and growing and blossoming in a way. And that started with the piloting process back right after the pandemic. The short-term mobilities, we started experimenting with them in the second semester of 2021. So these were kind of the predecessors of BIPs in CIVIS. So we already were inclined to organizing this kind of educational activities, and were officially launched at the end of the 2020-21 academic year. So perhaps get an overview of how we started, how the process looked like at the piloting phase. I will give you the floor, Alex, and then it will be always this tandem education mobility, because these two perspectives are really always present when talking about BIPs.
Well, it's interesting to think about and remember of those moments when we started CIVIS 1, as we call it, the first wave of funding from the European Commission in 2019, with a huge, target of thousands of students that would travel and experience learning opportunities in a mobile format. And we all know that in March 2020 something happened, a certain pandemic that moved all the objectives to a really important discussion. Okay, what's happening now? How do we actually achieve such targets? And at that point in CIVIS, along with a large team of experts from all the universities, the question was, okay, how do we still deliver innovative learning experiences to our students? How do we actually engage the community and keep it aligned with our views even during pandemic times? So at that moment, we developed the virtual component of the BIPs without knowing, of course, what the future will bring. But all the universities worked together and launched a very nice, attractive, and very rich offer of online courses, both from their own university curriculum that were opened to the CIVIS students, or new experiences designed just for the CIVIS community, and all of them were open to the CIVIS community as well. It was with challenges, of course. It was not easy to create such an offer in such a short time, but it was the only way in which we could actually still connect students to learning. And that was how, let's say, we piloted with virtual components. Whereas as the restrictions to travel started to become less and less problematic for some students, and students could start again to travel, well, again, the question was, what can we offer them? And then came the places, the summer schools and the shorter mobilities that were developed for students that would have the capacity to travel for a summer school of 5 days, 3 days, 4 days at any CIVIS university and experience hands-on, really challenge-oriented, challenge-based learning opportunities. So without knowing, we developed the physical component of the BIPs. And at the same time, the Commission, they restructured the Erasmus program, created the BIPs as a proposal of the new Erasmus program, and CIVIS was there.
We were ready.
We had both components without thinking of the fact that they could work together, actually. So when the Commission launched the new Erasmus program and the BIPs became a reality, we said, it's time to put them together. And we have the experience of developing virtual learning. We have the experience of developing and piloting shorter mobilities for students. Now we can put them together and, tell to the academics, now let's work together on this new format. So that is how we actually manage. You mentioned the 7 BIPs.
Can you talk from the educational point of view, and maybe after Lars, how you structure the two together? Because of course they were existing apart, but it's not just like a magic wand, let's bring this together to be a coherent educational proposal.
Of course, thank you. That was a challenging part, of course, because, well, pedagogical designs in an online format are different from the pedagogical designs in an on-site format. And you had to put them together so that they speak the same language, but also to align the topic across both components. So, of course, the first thing we had to do is find the relevant academics that would be willing, academics that already had sort of experience in international corporations, that were willing, of course, also to work in such environments, a bit challenging at the beginning. We didn't have all the processes, and we'll tell you about that, of course. So it was quite challenging at the first wave to support the academics to do it. So the first wave of academics that did it, of course, worked along us in order to design the learning experience, in order to be coherent. So we had to ensure that the learning outcomes, for example, were aligned with all the learning experiences that the student would go through from the virtual courses, meetings, lectures, whatever the formats were. And of course, the physical activity, which would not be only a meeting of the students that would just enjoy a 5-day trip at a CIVIS University, but would actually be a 5-day full intensive learning activity that would end up with, well, assessment, and everything so on. So it was a really cooperative design process on pedagogical design, methodologies, assessment, learning outcomes, recognition. Well, we had to deal with certification and many other things, of course, even at that time. But this was, of course, the way we tried to work together, and we learned from each experience, even from the first wave of BIPs. We even learned, even ourselves, in how those two are actually working together to make a real learning experience, and not only something just to, well, move students from here and there.
And this is a great ending to go to mobility. As we were piloting, CIVIS 1 was finishing, CIVIS 2 was starting, some structuring and restructuring was happening. In terms of mobility, how do you go from this piloting phase to one that starts to give more structure to this new format?
Yeah, actually, I even cannot talk about the piloting phase, because I started only working for CIVIS in November 2022, when the call was already done. So piloting and getting structured somehow is fluid here. It's not a clear phase 1 and 2, but we actually started the process without having fixed a process already. It was during the first year mainly going parallel. So of course that was quite a challenging time installing new structures. In CIVIS 1 we had a task force preparing everything, the strategy, also the call, which then happened to take place in between March and June 2022. So during the summer, we had the evaluation process, and in the end, a big number of BIPs that were approved. And then it came to realize them through student calls, right? And at that time, we started to install our new structure. For those who are not familiar with CIVIS, from the management side, we have 4 core units. The education unit, which is very much involved in making programs developed and to get an educational offer. The mobility unit, which comes in whenever it is about mobility, but also the digital campus unit, which prepared, for example, our CIVIS platform, through which all the applications and selection processes for BIPs would work later on. And of course, very important, the communication unit, because without them, we would never see any students joining the programs. So, and at the beginning, when those 4 units evolved, we step by step worked out this process where each unit in different phases had a central role. When programs evolved, education was important. When student calls were done, IT and mobility worked close together. Communication unit when it was about spreading the word about it. The pilot phase, or the structuring phase, of course, was nothing that went easy and smooth. Just to give you an idea, at the beginning, we were not sure about a clear calendar, how to proceed with student calls, because you imagine academics, they have the idea when my BIP will take place, so I need to have an application phase at that certain time. And each academic came up with different ideas when it's best to have application selection and actually the BIP taking place. So at the beginning, we ended up having student calls in September 22, November 22, and February 23. Parallelly preparing the next project call already. So it's like every time was a call. After the call was before the call. Sometimes you got confused which student was from which call. So yeah, that was the first year was, I wouldn't say chaotic, but
and before we killed all our staff, we decided we needed more structure, right?
Yeah, so this was the point, of course, when we regularly looked through what we started to do. We had our first experiences, but I can tell you still up to today, we have discussions about the best calendar. And as it happens to be, there is no best calendar because it is even very difficult with these 11 European academic calendars to find enough time slots where somebody is not off or on summer holidays. June starts in Sweden. We are back in Germany only in the middle of October. So still it's, you know, kind of a fine tuning, but I'm already going to the next.
Yes, before we go to what we have learned, the questions we're asking ourselves, our advocacy to actually change the rules with other alliances as well. I'd like to ask Leonie how she lived that, because we were going crazy trying to put 3 calls, 4 calls a year. But you were the student applying, you were our client, if I can say it like the bad word. How was it for you to apply for BIPs?
So the first time I applied for a BIP was in September 2022. And yeah, because the first BIP took place in September 2023 in Bucharest. And the process of applying to a BIP was very easy for me because you have basically all the information you need for applying. You have, you know, the content, you know, the practical information is when it's taking place, which is very important because as we know, academic years are very different. And the first time I applied, I was not really sure if I wanted to do a second one, but I kept looking at the CIVIS homepage and checking if there would be new BIPs to open up. And there were a lot of them, as you said, because all of those registration periods, I checked the website. And after that, it's only in September now, I think. Because now it's a registration period. And it's
registrations are open, so those following online and on site, you can go.
Yeah, which is great. But for me, it's very cool to have it now with a semester starting in Austria, and the process. I think it's very easy. So yeah.
Thank you. I have one question that maybe a lot of people who are not necessarily that familiar with CIVIS might ask: how do we go from 7 to 50? Besides the fact that we're doing 3 calls a year. And where are we going with that? I mean, from the structuring phase to the soul searching, we're asking ourselves a lot of questions about sustainability, inclusiveness, green mobility. Can we keep up this pace? Does it make sense? So first of all, maybe how we got to where we are and the advocacy we've made to actually smoothen this process as much as we have been able to achieve. And where are we going from here? So maybe the next 2 little trees together?
Well, the idea is that continuing from Lars's intervention on the chaotic phase, of course, even in designing the BIPs from the educational point of view, it meant that we have to, start creating clearer guidelines, clearer rules, if I may. Sometimes it was challenging from the academics because they had the feelings that, we are limiting their innovation or we're limiting their inspiration to create nice things. Because, you go to tell them, you can do it only between March and July. You can do it only from Monday to Friday. And you can do it only for this number of students. You have to follow this design of the learning outcomes and competencies. You have to have assessment and you have to prove it. And you have to make sure that what you said you will deliver, you will do it, you know. So all these processes that have to be developed were part of the first step into our soul searching, in a sense that, okay, we said Well, now we start to do them. We moved from 7 to 29 to 48 to 55 a year. So we said, well, it's a good time to sit down, look at them and say, is it enough what we are doing? Is it only the number of BIPs that matters to us? And of course it doesn't. So now we said, okay, we have to look more into the quality, on the content. We have to pay more attention to what is in the design actually. Is it only an online course, an online lecture, a series of 7 meetings with students that are bored to death by 3 hours lectures from academics 1 time a week, and then they are meeting to just have 5 days of party? Or we are actually working to have some concrete learning activity, and of course that's the outcome that we desire. So for that, of course, we started also to look at the BIPs and started to create also a bit of a feedback sessions, reporting procedure. And my colleague Mihaela will also glimpse into some of the results there, in the sense to look, okay, what is actually happening? What are the academics doing? And then we also wanted to see if the cooperation works. If this is actually working for the academics, if the academics can actually benefit from the BIP, or is something that they are pushed to do. You know, because universities, of course, have an interest in that, the Alliance has an interest in that, there are multiple interests around that. So are the academics happy with it? Is the system functioning? Are the processes we have set functioning well? Can the academics actually implement BIPs easily, or they are just doing it once and then they say we never want to hear about it, you know? So all those questions were part of our soul searching now. And of course, then my colleague will also dive into the questions about all the mobility and the other challenging things. But also in education, we wanted to talk about, okay, what happens with the learning recognition of the student? Can students go back in their home universities and take the BIP experience and add them in their degree? And this is still one of the challenges. Embedding BIPs in the degree programs of the students, making recognition automatic for all the students is one of the desires, but of course it comes at a package with challenges, administrative challenges, well, sometimes decision-making challenges of the universities and many other layers. But also the questions of where do we move on? But probably I'll go back to that afterwards.
So perhaps you can talk a little bit about the questions in terms of mobility. We've talked a lot, we also had this conversation last week at EAIE, sustainability, green mobility, inclusiveness. These are some of the questions that the mobility unit is asking.
Yeah. Before coming to that point, again, looking back to the first 2 years with BIPs, just to remind ourselves, lacking experience, how those programs work, just knowing the guidelines from the European Union. We all remember you have at minimum to reach the 15 students which are mobile. Mobile students, forget about the Africans, or forget about Glasgow, or forget about Lausanne because they don't count, forget about the local students. So you really have the Erasmus students to be mobile. And it's not the number of students who start, but who actually attend the physical part. So one big weakness or challenge with that BIP programs was that program coordinators were very unclear or unsafe if they actually get the money which they at that moment already spent. So that was really a challenge for the program coordinators in the first 1 or 2 years to understand, to adapt, also for us as coordinators. Thinking back, the summer school financial funding was different. There was not such rules like daily allowance, or also, important point at the first years, the funding situation was not very good for students, and that was one reason why programs lost participants, because when they realized what they actually get, that they have to invest their own money, they stepped back. So that was a very difficult phase, the first 1 or 2 years, and one very positive thing with the European Commission is that they reacted quite quickly on all the feedback. And I would say the European alliances and also CIVIS had quite a strong voice here. So advocacy works. So what we see today is that we only have the minimum of 10 participants who are mobile in the future, and the better funding for students, because now all participants will have also funds for the travel costs. So we are moving together in a good direction. This was also the feeling at the EAIE last week when we had a person from European Commission with us on the stage. Still, there are some things which are difficult. For example, the big bureaucracy, right? We actually have to do the same work in the international offices as we do for the semester exchange, just for a 5-day. Yeah, the learning agreements, the grant agreements, all those bureaucratic things. So there is still, a lot to improve. So, but that was also kind of the reason why we didn't tackle the more difficult questions, like how can we make sure to also reach the objectives of the European Commission and our own commitments towards green mobility and inclusiveness. And I find that your comment at the beginning was one I like to hear. You were already a mobile student and wanted to have even more experience. But to be honest, the BIP was actually thought as a program for those students who could not afford to go for a semester. And if we are honest to ourselves, we can be much better here. Yeah. So after having this rush behind reaching the minimum numbers of attendance, I couldn't say a program coordinator, sorry, you should look more into inclusiveness and don't take that participant. They would have been very angry with me because they had to focus on, I want that the program can take place and get the funding. So here is definitely something where we are now investing to find our strategies here, how we get better and really reach those people who are usually not that mobile. And just one example, I know one study program in Tübingen in pharmacy, they are usually not able to send students abroad for a whole semester. So for them, it totally fits as an opportunity to have an international experience in their program, because students go not away. And I think this is point of those more looking into quality and not only academic quality, but also into those questions, do we really reach the objectives? The same with the BIPs, with the green traveling, with the green travel. Of course, it cannot be our goal to send students around for 5 days through the whole of Europe, thousands of students, yeah? And we are aiming, or actually we are sending abroad through BIPs more than 1,000 students. And just thinking each European University Alliance would do that, well, it's far from green travel. So we are, again, sitting down here at the moment, and it's high time to come up for CIVIS with a strategy here. Some universities have already their own regulations, and we think together what we can do. There are ideas like have more regional BIPs or having, for example, some universities are in a better situation, as we in Tübingen, we're in the middle, so it's easier to travel with the trains. And of course, we have to come up with a concept that takes into account that students from Athens and Bucharest have a different situation. Yeah, but here I hope next year in Rome or 2 years at EAIE that we are able to really prove that we make really steps forward with those questions and challenges. We have seen a great BIP from Unite. Yeah, they made a BIP in the train about green travel. So you can see there's a lot of potentials in here also to address those questions. So that's still to do, but on this great basis we have in terms of functioning BIPs. And just let me say a last word. There are almost no BIPs is too much, but there are only a few BIPs which couldn't take place. So it's not that we had a big number of BIPs and half of them failed. It's really that we have only single BIPs which didn't reach the critical numbers. And then it's very important, also an advice to the outside, those who will have a BIP, there should also always be a plan B from the university to jump in case the OS funds are not usable due to that number not reached, and not leave it to the program coordinators then, to tackle that situation.
And of course, I think we have to be also very proud of the impressive amount of these to have been able to organize. Sometimes we are very modest and we don't realize when we talk to other alliances what an achievement it has been to be ready to be able to organize 50 so BIPs every year, we're asking ourselves the right questions, but also already looking at the road ahead. And I'll go straight to you, Alex. How do we go from here? You have touched upon some of the mobility questions and the directions that we want to take, but what about the educational part?
Well, I would structure the idea in three topics: embeddedness, scalability, and flexibility. So the aim is, of course, that all the BIPs need to be embedded in the degree of the student. We have to make sure that what we promise to the student is happening at the end of the road. And that means that all the BIPs have to be embedded so that learning recognition can be automatic between our universities and the student can use the maximum amount of that learning for his or her own degree. And this is, from my point of view, really important. Scalability, we need to use the BIP experience now that we have almost, I think, 200 BIPs which took place or taking place, which will take place, and use the experience of the academics to go next step. The one I mentioned in the structure, in the framework, to actually build the new experience. So use BIPs that are already taking place, where the cooperation already works, where the students are already satisfied with the experience, where the structure, the content, the pedagogical design is well made. Take those BIPs together, cluster them on topics, and create new learning experiences, micro-credentials, micro-programs, and degree programs. And they need support from us. They cannot do it on their own. So CIVIS has to start prioritizing this and work together with the program coordinators, with the academics, and design these new learning opportunities. And the third one is flexibility. BIPs have to be seen as a framework in which many wonderful things can happen. They don't have to be seen as something really constraining to the academics in how they design their activities. It's exactly the opposite way around. It's the best place for them to test. Why not fail sometimes and see that something is not working, and to experiment on the new didactical approaches that can be did for the student. And this can lead us into designing the one I said before, the scalability, designing the new learning opportunities. So we need to keep the flexibility. We need to be sure that we use BIPs and still see them as a framework rather than as a format, in order to make sure that academics have the highest voice in how they actually design those learning activities.
So actually the road ahead is taking us back to the piloting phase, and we're starting over again, trying new things, which is kind of like the bread and butter of the alliances. This is what we're here for, with trailblazers. So we want to go back to you to wake you up a little bit and see if people in the room or people following online on live stream, if you have ever implemented or participated in a BIP. Give you a second to reconnect. So mostly no, so far. There's room for growth.
So there are people that can start working on BIPs.
Yeah, just come and talk to them after the session. Okay. If you have participated or not, how would you describe your experience? Leonie, maybe you can scan it too. We got quite a mess during EAIE. Okay, great. Could you share in 2 or 3 words the barriers you may have found or that are preventing you from trying BIPs? And it can be about administration, it can be about fitting it into your schedules, fear of testing a new activity. Let us know a little bit. Come on. Partnerships, bureaucracy, registration process. I think we heard very similar responses when we presented this last week at a more open space, and gives me some reassurance of the administrative support structure that we've created in CIVIS, because these questions are the same that are coming back and back. Partnerships, administration. So we provide, in the context of an alliance, some of the support that people need for this. Okay, thank you. We're going to go now to our last slides for the first part of the presentation, which is, like we've told you, the evolution of how we've gone from 7 to 50, but now we're going to tell you how we do it. And it's a difficult, curvy road with ups and downs, and it is a process that we are always in, it's in constant revision and improvement. But I will ask Alex to take the first three, because the education unit is more at the beginning of the calls for the academics, and then Lars will take it to the mobility, and we'll finally ask Leonie, how was this road for her? Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Maria Isabel. Well, it ended up being quite an interesting road. And as we said in the development process, it didn't look like this from the very beginning. So it was, well, this image is rather...
There's a road at least.
Exactly. But of course, the idea was, well, it starts from the project call, which is dedicated to academics from the universities. So those of you that are familiar with CIVIS website and the CIVIS project calls, already know that for that we develop, of course, the guidelines, a document describing what we expect from the academics when designing the BIP, also the rules around it, the structure of the virtual and the physical component, the calendars, the details for student participation, the needs that we require them to design the learning outcomes, the learning activities, the assessment format, grading, certification, and all those details that are important for the academic to know from the very beginning when they want to start submitting a BIP. But of course, that also implies that they either already have partners in CIVIS or they need partners in CIVIS, because, well, it's an Erasmus rule, of course, that it's required to have at least 3 Erasmus universities, but this is also a CIVIS mandatory rule for all our projects. So we need at least 3 CIVIS universities to work together in such a project. So of course that whenever an academic needs support to identify partners, we have mechanisms in order to support them to identify the relevant partner in the CIVIS universities. And then of course, we provide them with all the tools, of course, the registration form, which has a lot of fields, of course, that have to be submitted by the project team. And there's a fixed calendar for that. So at this moment, so until now, we had 2 calls for projects each academic year, and as we call them, an autumn call and a spring call. So the autumn call was always between October, November each year, and then the spring one was between March and April. But now, as we are soul searching, as we saw, we have changed that. So from this academic year, we are moving. In the next months, we will launch the new call for projects, which will be a single call for projects per academic year. So this is already a change. And we did it because of multiple reasons, one of which is also linked with the Erasmus funding application, so that we can have a higher predictability of how many BIPs per university we will have to consider and how much money each university needs in order to organize those BIPs, but also in terms of, well, promotion and also ensuring a better embeddedness of the BIPs in the academic curriculum. So trying to also already start tackling those road ahead questions that we talked about. And then, of course, is the application of the projects, but then goes the evaluation, which is on a 2-side evaluation. So we have a technical evaluation of the application, meaning that we check together with the education unit and the mobility unit, we check if the applications fit in the calendar, if they respect the minimum requirements, the partnership rules, the eligibility criteria that we have set, if the projects have been approved by the university beforehand, because of course we need to make sure that the universities, the departments, the faculties have approved that project before it has been submitted. And then, of course, they are also academically evaluated, scientifically evaluated on the content by respective evaluators selected by the hubs, the CIVIS hubs, which we have 5 hubs, of course, for the people that are not so familiar with CIVIS, structure around the CIVIS challenges, which identify most suitable evaluators for the topics of the BIPs, so that the academic evaluation is made by, well, the most relevant persons in that regard. And if they receive a good score, they are proposed for validation by the governance bodies of CIVIS, And as we are in this soul searching and road ahead process, we can already tell you that we started actually rejecting BIPs in the same thinking of, okay, now we have to think about the quality and the content more than the quantity. So it was challenging, of course. It was, of course, a change of the way we did it in CIVIS, and we started to say, well, you actually have to work a lot to propose a wonderful BIP in order to be supported, because we really want the students to have the best learning experience. And then, of course, we are supporting them to refine a bit the BIP, because, well, they may have missed some information or something, well, probably is not explicitly mentioned, like the format of the competencies, the learning activities, the assessment format, so that we make sure that once we reach to the next phase, and my colleague will take that on, the information is crystal clear for the students. So students really need to know what they're applying for. They have to know, what does the learning experience look like? What they will learn? What will the activities look like? When they will take place? How they will be assessed for them? So that they can be prepared when they apply for the BIPs and they will take part in the projects.
Thank you, Alex. And maybe before going to the last 3 steps, there's a process also going in between with the digital campus unit and the communication unit working in behind the scenes to produce an update, the templates where the professors are applying, where the students will apply. And the way, at least in the communication part, there's a central team based in Brussels, Bucharest, and Athens that produces a lot of the content that's going to be part of the promotional materials. And then we distribute it and dispatch it to each one of the unit members in the 11 universities for them to adapt to their local communities and to fit it to their own communication strategies. So the idea is really to go again from local to global or from global to local to have these calls really make sense at the basis. So we don't only use centralized channels. The idea is that each university is also a very important communication channel. And then from the project call for the professors until the student call, it will be deployed in many different channels. Social media, the website, yes, of course, but also internal newsletters, the own faculty secretariats. Each university finds their own channels that make sense for them to place the calls. Now to you, Lars.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a very important stage actually during the whole process to have that good communication. And parallelly to preparing this, we also prepared the central platform for application together with the digital campus unit and the mobility unit, so that students then, when the call starts, are able to apply for the single BIPs, right? We currently have an open call, opened last week, with again around 50 BIPs that will last until the end of October. Then we have again a 2-step selection process. First, we have the decentral check by the mobility unit or by the Erasmus offices if the applicants are eligible for Erasmus funding. And that's the first step. Once this is done, the program coordinators make their academic selection. And again, once this is done, the whole communication starts with students. All applicants will receive, maybe that did happen in the first rows, but today each student applicant gets a message selected, waitlisted, or also rejected sometimes. And then after this Erasmus procedure starts again behind the scenes. Once students are selected, they have to do some typical steps like applying for the funding. This is then again done decentrally. And yeah, then from February, March on, the virtual mobility starts, the virtual courses, and it is quite flexible then when the physical part takes place. Some are early, some are in the middle, some are late during the summer. So you find each option here. And once the BIPs are done, Again, we have here different national situations. Some universities really enroll students for the short-term mobility. I know Salzburg is doing it, for example, here. So there's national legislation coming in again. Tübingen, for example, is not able to enroll for short-term stays. So we have different procedures here then going on. There's again, at the moment, not the one and only process, but jumping between central regulations and national local solutions. But the central platform is also able, and even if still fine-tuning is to be done, to process transcriptive records for those students or for those universities where students are not enrolled. Yeah, and well, the last step, and this is also something rather new. We started last year with the focus group interviews, and we will just hear from Michaela about that. And we now continue even with towards installing an evaluation process at the end, so that each BIP will also be evaluated in terms of what program coordinators think, but also what students experienced. So a typical cycle, I would say.
Thank you. So before we give the word to Michaela, perhaps Leonie, you are part of the second side of the road. From your perspective, these curves, these BIPs, the call, when it happens, the reporting, how was it for you?
First of all, I want to say a big thank you to all of you who administrate all of these BIPs, because I never really grasped how much work it is, of course. Because
then it worked.
And it worked. No, for me, when I register, I just wait for an email if I get to go there, if I'm waitlisted, if I get rejected. And from then on, it's administrative work, which is very easy at the University of Salzburg, thankfully, as well. We have a very good team here. And then the online classes take place, which is, from my experience, really great, because there's a lot of professors also from different universities participating, and you already get to know some fellow students, some of the professors who will be there in the practical part in wherever. And for the BIP, it's a lot of preparing before and afterwards for the classes, depending on what the project is about. And what I really enjoyed in my last BIP I did was the Moodle platform. That was really, really great, because you have all the information, all the PowerPoints, everything in one place. And for organizing the BIP itself, from my experience, it's very easy, because you get to know all the people there very quickly, because everyone is in the same place. And afterwards, it's a lot of administration to do as well from student perspective. But that's for getting the grants.
You bring in tears of joy in Alex and Lars's eyes. Thank you so much. I will ask Michaela to come over here. I'll put up your PowerPoint and share it with the people following online, because you're going to tell us how we are evaluated now, and if it makes sense. So you just need to here. You just need to click with the arrow here. Okay, I'll take your place.
So I was taking the notes while my colleagues were speaking here, and I said, okay, so we have results for that also. So we have results. So now I'm coming with some maybe a little bit more data, but most of what you said, it's going to be reflected in the results that I'm presenting today. So these results that I'm going to present today is just a glimpse of the first glimpse, let's say, of the BIPs, because we have a lot of more data that we didn't have the time to analyze, and this is a joint venture, as everything is in CIVIS. Yes, so this is also the same. So, except of what we are talking about here, just to have like a feedback on the BIPs, this process of evaluation or of feedback, we wanted to look more in detail of having this clear overview of the implementation, of the challenges, of the barriers, and so on and so forth. But on a much, let's say, a much larger scale, we also wanted to look into or to foster collaboration and to share successful strategies and tools, because at the end, all these results will come back to coordinators, to academics, to students, and so on and so forth, so we can really use that. And last but not least, even on a larger scale, to look a little bit more into the educational framework and on the CIVIS support structures. So these were like the main objectives or the instruments that we used for this evaluation. So what I'm going to present here is the results from two different types of instruments. We are having one more that we didn't get the chance to analyze, but the results we are presenting here are from focus groups that Lars already mentioned, and the focus groups were with BIP coordinators and also with students. And the second one is the survey that we administered in July 2024. I wrote it correctly. And it was applied to BIP coordinators. Here, maybe let's talk about a little bit more improvement, maybe a bigger response rate. It would be helpful, but this, as I said before, is just a glimpse on the BIPs. So a little bit from the results. When we are looking at innovative pedagogies that were mentioned in the previous sessions, is that one of the questions, if how was this reflected, how were in the BIPs reflected the CIVIS values? And as you can see here, most of the BIPs reflect the CIVIS values, and you can see the variability of themes that were covered in the BIPs. And also, as you can see, almost all the BIPs used challenge-based learning, and there were a lot of mentions from the students on how this was implemented, and the idea of real-world aspects, cutting-edge science, and working on real cases and real needs helped them a lot in. Or this approach helped them a lot in understanding and getting engaged in the activities in the BIPs. And of course, we talked also about the digital tools, and this was one of the, let's say, main things that both students and BIP coordinators mentioned. Is, as you can see, more than half of them use the CIVIS Digital Campus, and this connected to the blended learning experience. They mentioned that this combination, it was very valuable from them, because of course they had the first part, which was online, but they get the chance to get to know each other and have the theoretical background, and then for the physical part to really have a hands-on working experience. And if we are looking at this blended learning approach and these digital tools, one of the most highly valued, say, aspects of this was the ability to conduct live lectures, to have interactive discussions. As it was mentioned before, to have all the materials, let's say, in one place, it was very helpful. But what was, let's say, a little bit more need to work in it is to have a more standardized platform for all CIVIS educational activities. And this standardization and common ground, it will come up in other aspects also. So one of the things that was more valued by both by the students especially, but also by the BIP coordinators, was the part of the learning experience. And I know that Nadia mentioned it in the previous presentations, that it's one of the pillars. So there were words like highly educational, very insightful, and so on and so forth. And if we are looking at the teaching and the teachers, the teaching methods, the teaching styles, and the variability of approaches that the teacher came up with were very valued by the students, and also the way, you know, there are a lot of teachers in each BIP, and what was highly appreciated, it was that they were not like separate slots, but they were very well integrated. So the collaboration between academics was also very highly valued, and also, as I mentioned before, the connection between the theoretical and the practical and experiential learning. And now coming to the administrative and to the accreditation issues that were also mentioned before by my colleagues, we could see that here more than half couldn't embed the BIPs in their curriculum, but some things, side things were done, because even if they were not embedded in the actual curriculum, they were recognized in the diploma supplement. But this is not the same for all the CIVIS universities. So one of the things that came up is that the procedures for BIP implementation and validation vary a lot between the university. And here we can see for the ones that manage to include the BIPs in the curriculum, how was the process of validation. Also, looking a little bit forward and connecting to the discussion in the previous meeting, BIP coordinators were asked to see how the BIPs paved the way for joint degree programs. And here it's a very let's say a good point is that they paved somehow the way to joint degrees programs, but we need to take in consideration that, and we need to acknowledge that this cannot happen without long-term planning and coordination, and develop like harmonized curriculum, establishing some academic committee. And this is one of the points that is going to come up later, also reducing some of the administrative burden that academics said that it is. And some challenges, both from students' point of view and from coordinators' point of view. Again, as I mentioned before, that it came up this standardized administrative process that the students mentioned as one of their needs, and of course electronic submission and a more centralized system. And when we are looking from the coordinator's point of view, as I mentioned before, is the administrative burden, maybe a more need for streamlined information and more collaboration and integration of different support systems from CIVIS. And about some things about the mobility that we already tackled is the access of students from disadvantaged backgrounds. It was mentioned both by BIP coordinators and also by students as one of the issues of the dropout rate, because they are engaged in the online part, but when it comes to the physical part, as we talked before, they drop out. And here I know that, as Lars mentioned before, that things are improving. So we are, let's say that one step was already made in this direction. So going to some conclusions and recommendation, and in 2 minutes 3 I will finish, is that one of the most valuable aspects that came up in our evaluation is the learning experience and also the networking experience, which led up not only to collaborate in BIPs, but to further collaboration between academics, between students and academics, and among students themselves. So the educational value and overall excellence, the blended structure that helped a lot in putting together all the aspects, significant and positive impact of professors and their teaching methods, as I mentioned before. And if we are looking at this networking of our European feeling, this was also mentioned by students and by academics. Strong sense of European unity through all these aspects that had the ability to come together with people from different countries, languages, cultural backgrounds, and so on and so forth. And as I mentioned before, it fostered other types of collaboration, not only during the BIPs. And if we could look, let's say, and I mentioned and I stress what I mentioned before, that this is just the first glimpse of the BIPs. If we could look at these three level, European level, CIVIS level, and institutional level, there are some things that we need to consider. If we are looking at the European level, one of the main issues, let's say, that came up is the funding process and the need for a more transparent and predictable funding process, and have an appropriate funding model that also covers costs like transportation. And again, this was mentioned before that this was already taken a step. If we are looking at CIVIS level, one of the aspects, let's say, that came up the most is the administrative context that requires to be more efficient and standardized, to be more, let's say, appropriate for students and for coordinators also. And this was also mentioned before, to have like awareness of the timing of the BIP, even if that, as you said, it's work in progress, because the timelines of the timetables of the university vary a lot, but still this is something that we need to take in consideration and have it in the back of our mind. And if we are looking at the institutional level, the aspects of credit recognition, because as I said before, they vary a lot between universities, and this could be also one, let's say, motive that maybe makes students take a step back and look if it's a relevant experience for them. So this was just, let's say, a fast forward glimpse to the BIPs implemented until now, but we are still working a lot more data that we have to come, maybe with a little more specific recommendations and conclusions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mihaela, for making it tangible, actually, what we were talking about, like numbers. So we are facing some of the same challenges. What we will do now is open it for questions from you. Let me just get out of here and share again our presentation. We have one, so another question for you. After hearing all this, how likely are you to organize a BIP, promote a BIP in your university, or attend a BIP? I don't know if you're still connected, but maybe I can show the QR code again. If you are not, there you go. I'm happy with the one in the middle. That's for me. Thanks. So 6 out of 10 for organizing, 9.4 for promoting, 6.4 for attending. Good. Come and see us later. And actually, we have a first question about this on. We have a question about this on the chat, and you can also, if you want, If you're shy and you want to write your questions there, you can do it. You can also we can also give you a microphone if you have questions here in the audience. But I can start with one that's already in the live stream and that can apply to many of the universities. So it's hi, our department at Plus has not participated in a BIP yet, and this could apply to any CIVIS university, I would say. What would be the first concrete step that I need to take to make a current class or seminar into a BIP?
Well, I think the first step needed from the educational design point of view, and then I think, Lars, you can take over from the other arrangements on mobility, is of course to identify the potential partners, because they are inspiring in how you can actually develop what you already do in your university. So if you already have a seminar, you already have a course that you are delivering, and you look at it and say, well, this topic can really be interesting for international students, and I really want to push this and offer it to CIVIS audience. So the first step is find a partner, and we are here to help you to identify the partners that can work together with you to take that course, take that experience, that seminar you are offering, and transform it into something that, well, is a BIP. And think about also the physical component of it and how you also transform the learning experience in the virtual section. Because it's, of course, it's not you don't just take the course as you have it and just put a BIP label on it and then you offer it. Of course, it's not about that. But you will have to take what you already do as an academic and transpose that into a virtual environment, and then also attach the physical component, the 5 days physical mobility to it, and think about it. And you also have to think of, okay, but how do I open that up to my partners, my colleagues in the other universities? Because, well, you taught it yourself. It was your course, your seminar. You did it all the way to the end. So now you change that. You open it up to other colleagues from the other universities. You offer them parts of the topics. So there are negotiations in place for that, of course. But I think from the design point of view, and the first step would be that, get your team, and then you can start working on it to prepare it for a BIP.
Yeah, and once you have your team, then you know where it actually could take place. So the decision is, you should think maybe about it if you would like to invite to Salzburg. And then it's always a good step to be in touch as early as possible with the mobility unit member or directly with the Erasmus office and also the institutional coordinator, so that they are aware that you are planning to invite for a BIP, because it is also linked to getting enough OS funds, and such OS funds.
I'm guessing it will be the same for finding the partners. The education units can, if you don't have an obvious partner in one of the CIVIS universities, you can also explore that. Do we get assistance for that?
Yes, especially the institutional coordinator in your university. In each of your universities, the first contact point for helping you identify the partner. So if you don't have it, just reach out to your colleagues in the CIVIS offices and say, well, I want to do it, but I need partners. So they will tell you, of course, you have to prepare a short description of what you want, what is the profile of the colleague you're looking for, and of course, we will help you to do that.
It's a matchmaking tool. You can go on, sorry.
Yeah.
Academic Tinder.
Once the matchmaking is done, maybe I was too quick, so thanks for jumping in. But then it's just a decision where it should take place. And those partners, or if you want to invite, it's important to be in touch with the mobility unit and from the very beginning to plan or to be aware that there is something coming. So that's and to learn what kind of procedures are maybe necessary to do. But that's mainly all at that stage, I would say.
So I have a question, if I may. I'm professor of comparative literature at the National and Capodician University of Athens. I want to organize a BIP on a Greek island, which is connected to a very famous Greek writer of 19th century. But our university doesn't offer ECTS for this BIP, no credits. So I think it's, I don't know what we could do. No ECTS for a BIP.
Can I ask why? Do you know why they don't award it? I mean, why is the reason for not awarding the ECTS?
You have the answer?
Okay.
Oh, wait, so people online can hear you.
It's a decision that has been made, not aligned to the curriculum, but they add it as a supplement to the diploma. I mean, they add the CTSs, and sometimes it is, depends on the departments to decide through their own regulations if they're going to acknowledge the CTSs there.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. So in principle, normally the recognition is the responsibility of the home university of the student. You know, so normally the university that's coordinating is awarding the CTS as the organizing university based on the transcript of records that we are issuing for each university. But then, of course, it depends, and that's why we saw also on the results of the focus group that it varies between universities. So there are universities that cannot at this moment fully recognize, and that's why I mentioned about the embeddedness, cannot fully recognize ECTS for all the students in the BIPs, but they still add them in the diploma supplement. So as extracurricular ECTS, not counted towards the degree, of course, which is something that we're still working for. But it's still there. I mean, it's still visible for the student. It's not left outside of the process, so to say. So that's just to make, well, to be very clear on that, you know.
I'm going to take another question that was here sent to Menti. Are there BIPs organized in other languages than English, and or any future plans or objectives in that regard? Do we organize BIPs in other languages other than English? We do, and we've actually published one in French.
Yeah, actually,
but go ahead.
We didn't have so many. We don't know why. Probably because, well, English is the most common cooperation language also between the academics, but we do allow them to do it. I mean, they can be done in any of the CIVIS languages. I mean, you can do it in Swedish, Italian, French, German, Romanian. You can do it Greek. So, of course, once you do it in another language than English, there is a new level of challenge that appears. You have to make sure the student...
And you have to have the 3 universities.
You have to have the academics, of course, speaking the same language at the same level, of course, but you need this to make sure that the students actually understand you. So this is where the challenge comes from. Of course, the pool of students from where you make your selection is narrowed, because there are less students that speak, well, I don't know, Romanian, but more students that can understand and follow and program in English. So this is also to be considered, and we always advise academics to, well, be aware of this. But we have one in French, actually, and we had also another one in French, I think, last time, if I'm not wrong.
We have to share the mic, sorry.
The current student corps has a French yeah.
We have a question in the audience. Can you introduce yourself? Sorry, I didn't ask.
Yes, thank you. My name is Melissa. I'm working for Carinthia University of Applied Sciences in Austria, and I'm part of another alliance, so thank you for having me here. It's great to hear so many info, tips, advice, and everything. I would have a question about the BIP funding and the money. Like, how do you have sometimes to reimburse some of the money? Because I know for us it's very complicated, because it's hard to be flexible with BIPs when you have to apply for the money already a year in advance or something. And I like the idea that you have already this fixed time where you have, okay, we're going to apply each institution for 10 BIPs, even if we don't know that we don't have the BIPs yet. But for us, whenever I try to ask, like, could we maybe like have 1, 2, 3 BIP money, just in case we have people who want, the answer I get is no, because if we have to reimburse next year, we have less money. So it's kind of a barrier that's hard to cross.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I agree. Well, to be honest, I joined the team only when decisions were already made. So Tübingen, I can speak for Tübingen now, applied for 10 BIPs, but in the first year, I think we had 2. And also in the second year, we didn't use all. And yeah, this is indeed something that in later, when you apply for the next budgets, that you then feel it. Sorry. We applied this time for the 2024 project to have more BIPs, because now in Tübingen they were going better and better and better. So in the past we had the money and no BIPs. Now we have the BIPs and less money. So this is something that was probably strategically not the most clever way to go this way. But anyway, we take it from here. What we do at the moment is, for example, if we have in the central call BIP applications, for example, in Athens, they have 7 but can only finance 5. We try to find solutions for the other 2. Maybe other universities have some BIP OS funds left. But this is also something that just evolves now. And yeah, so, but it worked at the beginning that we applied for
so
BIPs
try
without
and
having
error,
a type.
basically.
Yeah, try and error a little bit, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have a question here that I think you already partially answered. How do I identify partners across the other universities to collaborate on a BIP? I don't know if you want to add something to your previous response to that.
I would just highlight that it's important to be very clear on the profile of the colleague. I mean, there were some times where we received requests from academics from the universities. I want to do a BIP on, I don't know, migration studies. I'm just saying a topic now. And I want a colleague from the other universities. It's really vague. I mean, the universities are huge. I mean, we have thousands of academics that maybe they do the same thing. So it's really important to be very clear. What is the profile? What is the field is that person is working in? Maybe faculty area of science that it's connected with the topic. How do you see the cooperation with that colleague? Do you want that person to teach part of the courses online or only to be part of the physical component? I mean, be as specific as possible, because otherwise it's difficult to find the best path.
Thank you. So how many new BIPs will be launched during this year? I think 48 is the ones that are open in the call right now until the end of October. So I could answer that one myself. How to reduce the administrative process, not as the long term, but less requirements. We started lobbying hard, and we already sent a big signal last week at the EAIE conference to the Commission that was like speedy taking notes from all the alliances saying, please, this is too much to organize BIPs. But I will let you say something more about, are there any tips on how to make this more fluid?
I'm sorry, I don't have the solution yet. I'm honest.
Let's advocate.
Yeah, but yeah, the question is if we need that kind of learning agreement in that for the whole procedure. As I said, this is nothing where we already have a proposal. It could be better like this or that, but definitely something where we learn that they have really open ears. Yeah. So if we come up with ideas how it could work better, we should address that. So for the future, and I know they're probably in each country, I know it from Germany through the German Academic Exchange Service, there are groups gathering each month, and yeah, we always say the help group, or so where we just exchange our experiences and so on, and maybe from there as well, and we can have some initiatives to come up with concrete ideas how it could work. So not yet had the time to really go into it and think about it, but definitely worth doing that soon. So
here's a question about something that we didn't touch upon. BIPs for administrative staff, and it's part of the questions we're asking in this soul-searching phase of our BIP evolution. So if you can say a word about that, it would be really good. I'm really interested myself.
Yes, indeed, we didn't start doing that actually, because we tried to using the BIPs for students, we tried to make the process clear. So we focus a lot on making the process, all the calendars and everything try to work, and I think we are there. So now, indeed, one of the topics we are concerned is doing BIPs for staff. We started to do trainings, different trainings for staff members on different topics, staff weeks. So we already have a bit of the background to do it. So probably in the next months, we will have more in-depth discussions of actually starting to organize BIPs for staff, administrative staff, because of course CIVIS has a lot of objectives in that area, also training both CIVIS staff and university staff on different topics. So yeah, that will have to come quite soon.
I think the next, is there another question in the audience, or these are from you probably, so I'll read them. Student engagement online is poor in many cases. Some are listening while at work, while driving, or other. This is not a university level learning experience. Are there any ideas for other BIP formats?
Yeah, well, that's I think all the academics that are teaching an online experience of whatever sort faces this challenge. I mean, we all have those black screens. We never see the student, or they are just opening the cameras and they're somewhere at McDonald's drive-through listening to us somewhere. So it's not a new challenge that only in the BIPs we see it. Of course, what we try to recommend to the academics designing the online component of the BIPs is to try to avoid as much as possible, you know, those classical lectures, because that's when, in most cases, we see that most of the students are not fully engaged there. So whenever we work together with the academics, especially our colleagues in the Innovative Pedagogies Expert Group, and our Innovative Pedagogy Officer, Enrique, is working together with the program coordinators, so it's not actually us that do that. They usually help them to try to find more cooperative learning activities in online format, project-based learning, so things that have to keep them more present, you know. So, and if, you know, the thing is also promote it. We always tell them from the beginning, this is how the online activities will look like. So we hope that the students, once they apply and see all the details, they will know what they're applying for. So they cannot say afterwards, well, I couldn't attend because I was doing something else and I didn't know how the course will take place. We try to avoid that as much as possible. But I don't think there's a perfect recipe for that, because it depends a lot on, well, the student's personal motivation and many other factors, of course, as well.
So this question is similar to the others. What tools do you have to identify partners in the other universities? But it made me think about what we did for the seed funding call with the African universities. Maybe can you say a word about this matchmaking tool that we created for that specific one, and how they could be an inspiration maybe in the future for finding the partners?
There, the topic of the matchmaking tool was always a recurrent topic in CIVIS. It has many challenges in those kinds of cooperation because, well, you need time and resources to manage such a matchmaking tool. What we also noticed is that actually the number of academics that need partners is not that high. So creating an entire new tool just for that, maybe it's not justified at this moment, because the internal channels that we have, the networking processes, are quite functional. So probably in the future we will need to develop more the matchmaking tool in that direction, but at least for now, well, the direct contacts and the support of the institutional coordinators from all 11 universities really works out.
Do we have any other questions in the room? We finished early. So thank you very much to all for attending, for your questions. You can have a break now. Would you like to add anything? When is your next beep? Well, good luck tomorrow. Thank you all. It's early to work.